For those of us who need a bit of a refresher on the events of the inheritance cycle, with a focus on those events tied to the struggle against Galbatorix, I'll begin with a series on some of the big players and their lives before the events in Aragon. Welcome, riders. Welcome to the Sword and the Ring, a place for all sorts of lore with a special focus on Middle-earth, Hogwarts, Alagaesia, and a galaxy far, far away. I made this channel to start a dialogue on some of my favorite topics. I don't advertise myself as an expert, so please feel free to correct me down in the comments. I would love to get to know your thoughts on these universes. Today, we take a look into the world of Alagaesia and into the early life of one of the worst men to ever ride a dragon. Galbatorix was a young man, only 10 years old, when his dragon, Jarnunvask, hatched for him. He joined the riders and almost immediately following his training, went on an ill-advised trip into Urgrel territory. He and his friends were ambushed, and his friends and their dragons were slain. Jarnunvask was struck with a mortal wound, and Galbatorix, while a great rider, did not have the skill to heal his dragon. Lost and alone in the mountain wilderness, and most strikingly without his dragon, Galbatorix began to go mad. After a time, Galbatorix was found by Durza, or at least the spirits he had inside him, and learned much, including some vile dark magic. Galbatorix then got it into his head that he could return to the riders and receive another dragon to replace Jarnunvask. Unfortunately, the Rider Council could tell from the insistence of his pleading that he was not prepared to receive another egg. This angered the madman and convinced him that the riders themselves were at fault for Jarnunvask's death. After hiding in wastelands for 7 years, Galbatorix met a young rider named Morzan. He convinced Morzan to help him steal a dragon from the riders, and thus Galbatorix was able to come into a second dragon, Shurikan. Galbatorix tutored Morzan and used dark magic to bend Shurikan to his will. This perversion of the dragon rider bond led Shurikan to grow extremely quickly, Galbatorix himself to age much quicker than normal for a rider. Galbatorix and Morzan began their attack on the riders 3 years later. The pair killed riders, their dragons, and wild dragons throughout Alagaesia. They eventually convinced 12 other riders to betray their comrades, and these riders became the Forsworn. With the aid of stolen Eldunari, the Forsworn and Galbatorix attacked the riders at Vroengard. The leader of the riders, Vrail, failed to strike the killing blow on Galbatorix when he had the chance, and was wounded and forced to retreat. Galbatorix and the Forsworn followed the riders to Edexil, and there all but destroyed the dragon riders when Galbatorix decapitated Vrail. In a final move to humiliate the former leader of the riders, Galbatorix stole his sword and renamed it Vrangar. He also sacked the city of the riders and took or burned manuscripts from all across Alagaesia, as well as, importantly, 3 dragon eggs. Now, having dealt with the riders, Galbatorix was able to attack Illyria, and against the combined forces of humans, elves, and dwarves, won a great battle. He claimed the throne and renamed Illyria Urbane. Galbatorix and the Forsworn were stopped from eradicating the elves as they placed heavy wards on their forest of Du Weldenvarden, and the dwarves due to the retreat to Trondheim. Now, only a small handful of resistance remained, and they named themselves the Varden. While the Varden was annoying, Galbatorix was fairly secure as a king. His obsession turned from conquering to knowledge. As you may recall, he stole many transcripts from the writer's library, and had recently come into control of the libraries of Urbane. This led him to an obsessive study trying to find the true name of the ancient language, intent on having complete power over it. He would spend the next 100 years in search of this knowledge. Shortly before the events of the inheritance cycle, Galbatorix does something that forces the hand of the Varden. He sends word to the Urgals with promises of land and riches in exchange for their service. However, he tricks them and uses Durza and his dark magic to compel the Urgals to fight for no reward. Galbatorix, looking to stir tension against the Varden, sent the Urgals into the bay or mountains to slaughter any in their way. Almost 100 years into this tyrannical rule, we meet a young poacher in the mountains of the Spine. We'll continue with the history of the war against Galbatorix next time with a history of two other major players, Morzan and Brahm. Let me know your thoughts on any other topics you'd like to hear more about down in the comments. I'll be with you next time on The Sword and the Ring.